Welcome to Detroit. Doesn't matter if you have one ass cheek and three toes. I will beat your ass. You can drown them. And that's what we gotta be. That's who we have to be. Because that's our domain. That is our domain. Because we'll tread water as long as it takes to fucking bury you.
Takes the snap, turns, gives to Montgomery, right side, end zone, touchdown, Detroit Lions! Yes.
We are driven by Detroit.
Hello everybody, and welcome on back to yet another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. I'm your host, David T. Pike, and as always, we're diving on in. So for today, folks, we're going to be talking about something that I normally do not talk about. In fact, it might be the first time I've ever talked about this in the entire time I've been doing podcasting, because you guys all know me. I love Detroit sports, but as long as I've been podcasting, I have primarily, if not only, ever talked about the Detroit Lions. I've never really talked about anything else. Everything that I've primarily talked about has focused around the Detroit Lions. However, though, in today's episode, I'm going to kind of step out of my comfort zone. I'm going to kind of delve into a little bit more of something else. Now, what exactly is that? Well, let's understand what we're going to talk about here. When you talk about most sports cities where they have a number of sports franchises, usually they have a football team, a basketball team, a baseball team, and usually a hockey team of some type. Usually when you talk about sports cities, the ability to state that you have a good or a successful team is a great sense of pride. And I'm going to say this right now. That's just if you have one. But if you have more than one, it's doubly so. But for a sports city to have a team win the championship that is associated with the sport that they play, that's beyond comparison. Because at that point then, now you can say, hey, we're champions. We have a championship that's being brought back to our city. It just makes the entire city, and honestly, the entire state, if that's the only thing that that state has to own as far as that, that city that has that kind of sports center, that makes them feel absolutely proud of themselves. Now, I'm going to say this. Many of the sports cities that are out there have had this happen in one sport or another. There's been there's been multiple instances of this. I mean, between the NHL, NBA, MLB, and the NFL, it's happened multiple times. And it doesn't matter whether it's football, basketball, baseball, or hockey. But what is a truly rare feat? In fact, it is so rare that it's only happened 7 times in the entirety of the Super Bowl era of the NFL, is when you have a city win both a Super Bowl along with another major championship event in the same year. So what I'm talking about is the same, season. So, you had a Super Bowl winner in 2006, and you had somebody who won the World Series in 2006. Or you had a Super Bowl winner who won the, who won the Stanley Cup or something like that. That's what I'm talking about. And then the entirety of the Super Bowl era, that has only happened 7 times. Not exactly a whole hell of a lot, considering the fact that the Super Bowl has been around since the early to mid-60s. So we're talking about over 50 years of, we're talking about over 50 years of football where it's only happened 7 times. That's quite a small number. Now, I'm going to tell you this. The last time this feat was occurred, when a team won a Super Bowl in a season, along with another major sporting event, as far as another championship, was in 2020 when the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and the Tampa Bay Lightning of the NHL won the Super Bowl and the Stanley Cup. The other occurrences that this happened was in 2018, 2004, 1989, 1986, 1979, and 1970. So what that ought to tell you is there's quite a bit of a gap between a number of those occurrences. The smallest gap obviously occurred between 86 and 89. But for the most part, you're talking about a decade plus between most of these occurrences happening. And so I'm going to put this out there right now. If you take a look at all those occurrences, all but one of those occurrences has happened where the city won both the Super Bowl and also the World Series. So think about that. In the 7 times since the NFL has started doing the Super Bowl, which again goes back to the early to mid 60s, 6 out of those 7 times has been with the World Series. The only other time that has happened has been with the NHL Stanley Cup. Currently, none of it has happened with the NBA Finals. Rather an interesting occurrence in my opinion, but still, I'm just putting it out there for what it is. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because if you're a Detroit sports fan, like myself, you follow along what's happening with Detroit sports. Doesn't matter if it's the Lions, doesn't matter if it's the Red Wings, doesn't matter if it's the Pistons, doesn't matter if it's the Tigers. You follow along. Now, currently, the Tigers are the closest other team in Detroit sports to getting to winning a championship right now. The Lions, in my opinion, are also the other closest one. Those are the 2 teams of the 4 in Detroit that are the closest to winning championships in their respective sports at this current moment. And the reason I can say that is because of, 1, either what they have done in the past, as is the case with the Lions, or currently what they're doing right now at this moment, as is the case with the Tigers. Currently, the Detroit Tigers, at the time I'm recording this, so by the time I release this, this could actually change, but currently at the time I'm recording this, the Tigers have the 3rd best odds of winning the World Series, according to Vegas, at plus 700. And they are tied for the first best odds to win the AL pennant, that's American League, for those that don't follow baseball, the American League pennant at 270 plus. Now, that's the Tigers. If you take a look at the Lions, on the other hand, the Lions currently have the 5th best odds to win the Super Bowl at plus 1,000. And they also have the best odds to repeat as the NFC North champions this year at plus 155. So, that right there ought to tell you something very, very clearly. What it should clearly tell you is that both the Lions and the Tigers are betting favorites to win both of their sports' respective championships, which, again, in and of itself, is a rarity. I already mentioned, it's only happened 7 times since the Super Bowl got invented or was introduced in the NFL. But on top of that, let's just call it for what it is here. How often does Vegas, I'm just going to put this out there, how often does Vegas truly put the betting odds for a team or teams from the same city actually going and winning the championship associated with the sport that they actually play? I'd be willing to bet it's not that often. Vegas is one of those kind of interesting little things where it will follow the money. And the fact that the Lions and the Tigers are so highly regarded as being able to win their respective championships, I'm going to tell you this right now. That's a first in Detroit sports history ever. But, again, the fact that it's been such a rare occurrence in the first place for 2 sports that are, both the NFL and another associated league, whether it's the NHL, MLB, or NBA, to have that at the same time, again, not a very common occurrence. Now, currently also, the Tigers are at the top, again, at the time I'm recording this, at the top of the MLB record in terms of wins and losses, as they have had an absolutely great season so far. They've had stupendous pitching, which is also matched with great defense, and they've had powerful batting performances. Again, I don't watch baseball all that much, but I love the sport. I played it for a long damn time. I was a pitcher, I was a third baseman, I was also an outfielder. I did quite a bit as a baseball player. So I do love the sport. But if you're going to ask me which one I'm going to sit down and watch, I'm going to watch the Lions 100 times out of 100 over the Tigers. That's just me being honest. Nothing against the Tigers. It's just whichever sport I'm going to watch, if I'm given a choice, I'm going to watch football before I watch baseball. That's just me. But I still love my Tigers just like I love the Lions. They're Detroit sports. So, here's why I'm bringing this up. For the Detroit Tigers, they have a great opportunity this year to get to the World Series. Why? Well, obviously, as I just stated, at the time I'm recording this, they are tied for the best record in the MLB at the current moment. But you have to think about it from last year. Last year, the team got to the playoffs. They won a playoff series in the wild card series. And they are hungry to want to continue their success that they had in the playoffs last year. Now, granted, of course, they got defeated in the divisional round series to the Cleveland Guardians. They lost to the Cleveland Guardians last year in Game 5, whereas they swept the Houston Astros in the entirety of the, wild card series. So, okay, this is a team last year that completely swept a team, the Houston Astros, in the first round of the playoffs, and they almost went all the way to Game 7 in, obviously, the divisional series. So this is a team that already has some playoff experience. It already has shown that it has the capability of going all the way. And how they've been playing this year definitely gives the indication that they can do that. So that's the Tigers. Now, the Lions, on the other hand, as we already know, and as I've talked about them quite extensively, go figure, the Lions have been top contenders for the Super Bowl the last 2 years, and they nearly got to the Super Bowl in 2023. Again, I've said it before as kind of a play on words, but it's the truth. The Lions were a literal whisker away from going to the Super Bowl. And if you realistically want to think about it, some people might agree with me, some people might not, but the way I look at it is the Lions' resurgence can be considered kind of the springboard, which has also kind of resurged all the other Detroit sports franchises, especially the Tigers and also the Detroit Pistons. Because I'm not saying that, it directly influenced that, but ever since the Lions kind of came back, the Tigers and the Pistons have been right on their heels. Because if you think about it, even the Pistons are kind of getting to that point. Because the Pistons last year, they got to the playoffs. Now, granted, they were, bounced in the first round. And I'm going to be honest, I thought they got cheated because I saw a lot of the freaking clips. And it was like, dude, some of the penalties that were getting called in that game and the fouls was just, it was absolutely just bewildering. But again, the point of the matter is the Pistons, just like the Tigers, have made immense strides to now become competitive teams in their respective leagues. And the way I look at it is like, okay, do I think the Pistons can get to the NBA Finals? I don't know if they're there just yet, but they're getting there. But the Tigers, oh hell yes, they can definitely get to the World Series. And the Lions, they can definitely get to the Super Bowl. Again, I've said it before with the Lions. The Lions have stacked offensive and defensive units. They have an array of talent that is both very deep and young, but at the same time, it's very well seasoned. It's very well developed. It's very well battle-tested. This Detroit Lions team over the last 2 years has taken the best that the NFL can give it, and more times than not, they have proven to be able to handle it in a number of ways, whether it's primetime games, whether it's against playoff opponents, whatever the case might be. So the way I look at it is that, okay, the Lions are definitely in a good position to go to the Super Bowl this year and to win the Super Bowl this year. The Tigers are in a good position to get to the World Series and win the World Series this year. Now, obviously, we got a long way to go before either of those things can potentially happen. But the reason why I'm making this episode is because it's like, okay, the Tigers are already very well into their season. The Lions obviously have yet to even start theirs. They haven't even started training camp yet. but they're getting close, and preseason's going to be shortly thereafter. So the way I'm going to put this to y'all is this. Do not be at all surprised if this is the year that the 8th time since the Super Bowl got started that a sports city wins both a Super Bowl and another championship event. This case being the World Series. And considering the fact that of the 7 times that it has happened since the Super Bowl got started, 6 of those 7 times have been associated with a World Series championship along with a Super Bowl championship. So there's quite a good amount of historical backing that says, hey, this is actually relatively possible. This actually has a decent chance of happening. Now, I know some people are going to say, well, David, again, the Lions have a tough schedule, blah, 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 blah. I understand that. But again, I've said this before, I'll say it again now. Even though the Lions' schedule is tough, again, they have been one of the most battle-tested teams over the last couple of years, and let's just call it for what it is. They have been through quite a bit to have both the physical and mental rigors to be ready to go to the playoffs and to get to a Super Bowl. This is a team that has gone through a lot of hardship. It's gone through a lot of growth. It's gone through a lot of development. And on top of that, from all the adversity that the NFL and the media have given them, they've developed quite a damn tough skin over the last couple of years. So for me, I believe that the Lions are in a prime position to win their first Super Bowl ever. While on the other hand, this would be for the Tigers their 5th World Series title because they won it in 1935, in 1945, 1968, and 1984 was their last one. So this would be their 5th World Series championship. But my whole point is this. Just the thought of one team winning a championship for the city of Detroit, for the state of Michigan, that would set the whole state and city on fire. But imagine, if you will, if 2 of those teams for the same city were to win and it were to be the Detroit Tigers and the Detroit Lions. I'm telling you this right now. People would be dancing on the ceiling. They'd be going cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs. It would be absolutely just joyous pandemonium in the streets of Detroit. I mean, it would just be absolutely out of this world how freaking crazy the city of Detroit and the state of Michigan would be if, I would say arguably, the 2 biggest draws that are as far as sports are concerned in the city of Detroit and also in the state of Michigan were to win their championships this year. Because I'm not saying anything bad about the Pistons and I'm not saying anything bad about the Red Wings. But if you want to talk about, actual revenue draws, the Lions and the Tigers definitely got both the Pistons and the Red Wings beat, bar none. They're more popular, they're more syndicated, and they're more televised than either of those 2. Even though hockey is played worldwide, along with basketball. Baseball is a little bit more so than, obviously, football, because when you talk about football typically worldwide, you're talking more about soccer. But if you're talking about here in the United States, baseball and football, they're the kings of making revenue when it comes to sports. And for the Lions and the Tigers to win the championship of both of their sports respectfully in the same year, dude, the whole city of Detroit would just be absolutely tilted on its ear. The whole state of Michigan would be in, just like I said, this joyous uproar. So that's what I'm presenting. That's why I have my thumbnail image the way it is. The year of Detroit. That is what I think could happen this year. And I'm telling you this right now. Nobody, I think, is thinking about this like I am. Everybody's kind of thinking about, one or the other, or we'll see what happens when we get there. No, I'm calling it right now. I could see both of these things happening. And trust me when I tell you, if it does happen, all bets are off. Like, dude, the whole world as we know it as Detroit fans of sports is going to go completely out the door. Just saying. But anyway, folks, You do with this information what you will. Call me crazy, call me enthusiastic, call me whatever you will, so long as it's respectful. Having said that, I'm going to end this episode and say thank you all for watching in another episode of MCM Motor City Mania. If you like what you saw, by all means, I highly encourage y'all please to subscribe to the channel. And I also want to encourage y'all, if you do so, make sure you hit that bell notification icon so that way you guys never miss any more content that I push out. Also want to encourage y'all please to share the content, and I hope everybody is having a great day. I hope y'all have something in your life that makes you happy, makes you smile. God bless, my friends, and until the next time we meet, I'll see you all in the next episode.